My name is Mark Blotcky. I'm a child psychiatrist and a general psychiatrist, and I've been asked today to talk about Munchausen's by proxy. I've been in practice for about 40 years, and I've seen a number of these cases. They're very difficult for people to understand, both at an intellectual cognitive level and at an emotional level, because they're very disturbing. Munchausen's by proxy is also known as factitious disorder by proxy, and I think first I should explain something about how psychiatric diagnoses are made and how we understand people that have psychiatric diagnosis. The best explanation format I know is a model called the biopsychosocial model of psychiatric disorders, and that was by George Engel about 50 years ago, in which he designed and described that when you're trying to understand a patient, you need to consider biological factors, psychological factors, economic factors, medical factors, legal factors, economic factors, socio-cultural factors, religious factors. You have to look at everything in someone's life in order to really understand what's going on. So that would include genetics, that would include childhood growing up experiences, their temperament they're born with. All of those things go into an integrated understanding of how someone becomes who they are. All the people that have Munchausen's by proxy are not the same. They're different kinds of people, and they're very hard sometimes to understand. Factitious disorder, or Munchausen's, not by proxy, is when someone exaggerates, feigns, or some people would call it malingering an illness or creating an illness that doesn't exist. Malingering, however, is a bit different, and the malingering usually has an external reward. People that malinger may be doing it to gain money, to win a lawsuit, things of that nature. Somebody that is being manipulative and faking an illness may be doing it in order to win a lawsuit, to get the compassion of their spouse, things of that nature. Usually we look at people with factitious disorder by proxy, or Munchausen's disorder by proxy, as meaning that they're doing something for some internal gain rather than external gain. And by proxy means that instead of me as a person doing it for myself, I create the illness or the exaggerated illness in my child. It's almost always with mothers. Now, factitious disorder, not by proxy, is usually with men, but with factitious disorder by proxy, they're almost all mothers who present themselves as extremely loving, extremely caring, and that they really understand their child's illness better than anyone else. And that's part of the dynamic, which is they want to show people that they understand better than anyone. They love their child more than anyone could love a child. They're doing more for that child than anyone could do. And some of that could be conscious and purposeful, and some of that could be unconscious and out of their awareness. So we have sort of a spectrum, and if you look at this, I think the thing that people want to understand when you look at a disorder like this is what drives the mother to do it, and then what kind of things does she actually do. So the kind of things that somebody with factitious disorder does, and I've seen a number of these, they don't give the child the proper medicine, and they keep going to the doctor and telling the doctor, you're not trying hard enough, you don't understand my child, here are all the symptoms they're having, and the doctor's puzzled. And of course, most doctors and most professionals and most people don't even consider the fact that they're feigning this illness. And so therefore, it's oftentimes not discovered until they've seen many doctors, had many procedures, until someone actually makes the diagnosis. It's a hard diagnosis to make. And the kind of things they do sometimes are kind of unfathomable, like feeding their child ground glass, like feeding them poison, like not giving them anything to eat and starving them and saying they have anorexia, giving them things to make them have diarrhea or vomiting, or in the psychiatric realm, doing something to your child, like you have a child who has depression anyway, and you keep talking to your child about how depressed they are, how depressed you are. I know you must be thinking of killing yourself. I hate it that you think of killing yourself so much, that they talk to them so much that I've had a little boy say to me, you know, I thought I was suicidal. That's why I went in the hospital, because I thought I was suicidal. My mother kept saying it to me. So they engender a psychiatric disorder being bigger and more severe than it really was. So they can do everything from something physical to their child or something psychological to their child to make them more ill. Another important dimension, though, is to what extent do they know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And we would hold that people are very complicated, that it's hard to understand people's motivation. We all have many layers that we live in and many ways we feel about things and think about things. And so while some of these people may be really kind of antisocial, meaning they don't care about how the other person feels or how they impact other people, there are many of these women who are very needy, very dependent, need a lot of attention, want some affirmation from people around them, want a close relationship to the doctor, want to prove they're more powerful and trickier than doctors and lawyers and criminal investigators. So there can be many motives that are not really just about making their child ill, but motives that are about what they need in this world. We all live with compromises in our life. We make compromises in our relationships. We make compromises in decisions about our career. We make compromises about many psychological things. So for these people, some of them, out of their awareness, they're making a compromise, and they really believe their child is more ill than the child is, and they don't realize some of the things they're doing to make their child more ill. They think they're helping, and it's sort of out of their awareness. So those people are going to engender a little more compassion. On the other end of the scale, there's those people who are feeding their child glass or withholding very important medications or giving them too much of a medication, know they're making their child ill, but they like to come in on a white horse and be the savior. And I'm the one that knows what's wrong. Nobody understands this as well as I do. And all the doctors and all the professionals are scratching their head and they're stumped by what's going on. And some of the women will garner a great deal of satisfaction and sense of power out of doing that. The diagnosis is made for the parent, not the child. The child is the victim here. And the diagnosis is made by criteria set by the American Psychiatric Association in what's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, currently Volume 5, which is a big, thick book with a lot of criteria, and it looks a little bit like a Chinese menu to some people, in that you have to have 2 in column B and 3 in column C and 4 out of this, and if you have all those, you meet the criteria. These criteria are made by groups of very well-educated psychiatrists, child psychiatrists, psychologists, other mental health professionals, based on their study of their research, the literature, their clinical experience, many hours of meeting, many discussions, surveys of what the American psychiatry community thinks, and then finally, after a great deal of work, the criteria for this diagnosis comes out in a book like this. But in fact, people don't always fit into that cubbyhole. They don't always fit exactly into one category or the other. So sometimes people that have Munchausen's by proxy, may have some malingering as well. And so there's a discussion about whether there's external gain or not. Some people would say you can have Munchausen's by proxy and get some external gain. There may be money in it for you too, or you may be one of the common things is for this to happen during a divorce, where the mother accuses the father of not understanding the little boy's hypothyroidism and doesn't understand how the medicine should be given, and she knows better. And so every time the child goes over to see the father, she doesn't give him the right medicine, or she confuses it, and she purposely does it in order to gain something. And that could be just to win in the divorce case. So there are a variety of motives that occur. There's also, unfortunately, a wide range of effects this could have.